Hi, I'm Leanne with Two Home Chicks, and in honor of Heather, I've decided to do a burlap banner because burlap is her favorite thing. Okay, so what you're going to need is burlap, and honestly, I used probably less than half a yard for this pattern, so you can get as much or as little as you want, but you're going to need at least a half a yard. You're going to need ribbon for your binding. You're going to need fabric. You can use one fabric and just do the letters the same, or you can choose different fabrics as I did. You're going to need the light heat bond if you're going to sew around the zigzag around the edges of your letters. If you're just going to iron them on, then you can use the heavy heat bond. All right, the only thing else you need is a pair of scissors and your sewing machine if you're going to sew. If you're not going to sew, this could be a very easy project. You just need your hot glue gun and your iron. Otherwise, if you're going to sew it, I would say it would be a moderate project. Okay, so let's get started. Now that you have all your supplies ready, the first thing we need to do is make your template for your burlap triangles. Okay, I'm going to take a piece of 8.5 by 11. I use cardstock because it just is a little firmer. And you're going to fold it in half. And we're going to draw a straight line. This is the folded line right here, from one corner to the next. Okay, if you have a pair of scissors, you can cut it. I'm going to use my paper cutter because I'm a perfectionist, and that way I get a nice straight line, but you can easily do that with a pair of scissors. Okay, open that up, and there's our template. Okay, now we need to cut our burlap. I've already cut my burlap to the width of my paper. So, let's get started. If you don't have a straight edge, you can just mark it with a pen. In fact, I'm going to use my straight edge and my rotary cutter, but if you don't have one of those, do not worry. This is a very affordable project. If you get one of these disappearing ink pens, you can get them from Joann's or probably Hobby Lobby. You can take a straight edge, which could be a ruler, anything, and you would just mark it. You'd mark it with your disappearing ink pen, and after, I believe it says on the packaging, within a few hours it will just disappear. But I'm going to use my rotary blade. We're going to make 4 of these because we're writing out the word fall. We're going to invert it so we don't waste any of our burlap. Not that burlap is expensive. It is quite affordable. So this is a very affordable project. Okay, so I just cut the one right here. So now I'm just going to flip it over to the other side so that we don't waste any of our fabric. Okay, now that we've got our burlap triangles cut out, we need to talk about the letters that are going to go on them. Okay, as you can see, that's the letter A that's going to go on there. Okay, so I found these great printables from alphabetpatterns.com, and this font is called Zoinks. And the great thing is I bought the whole alphabet, but they gave me not only just one size, it was 2 inches all the way to 6 inches. This is the largest size we printed from. So I just printed them out. I think it was less than $10, and you had all of it. So I printed them out, cut them out, and this is going to be our template going there. First thing we need to do is cut our fabric into a square, and then we're going to adhere the heat bond onto the back. So I have to think about what I want on my letter. So I'm going to make sure that I get a little bit of the orange. Since we are doing a fall banner, I want to make sure I've got some orange in there. So I'm going to put mine about right there. So I'm going to cut a square. Okay, I'm going to cut a square just big enough for this letter. Okay, I'm going to do that with every letter. And I'm going to do mine out of 4 different colored fabrics, but you could choose one fabric or you could choose different fabrics. We cut out all of our fabric swatches, You can see that the F for fall is going to fit nicely on there. Now we're going to take heat bond, and it comes in a big sheet. So I've cut it into small pieces to fit onto our fabric. So there are directions on the heat bond, but what we're going to do is we're going to put the glue side down on the back of our fabric, and it's literally going to take just a few seconds to get that adhered. We're going to be ironing on the paper. And that's done. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to trace around our F, and we're going to cut it out. Okay, we've ironed on our heat bond in the back. So now we're going to trace our letters. Just basically take your letter that you cut out, and this is why it's nice to have it on cardstock. You're going to put it the opposite way. For example, the A, normally I would write my A like this, but when I traced it the opposite way so that when I cut it out, the fabric will be the right direction. Okay, so I'm going to trace my L. All right, so as we trace our letters, we cut them out. I've cut out the F and an L for you already. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to peel the paper off of the back. And it's going to feel very shiny on the back of that. So the glue has adhered to the back of this. We're going to take our triangles. We're going to place this right where we want it. And then we're going to iron it in place. Okay, we've got our letters all cut out. We've peeled off the heat bond off of the back, so they're a little tacky. And we're going to place them onto our triangles, but we need to account for about a 1/2 inch seam allowance for our binding. 1/2 inch to 1 inch, depending on how thick you're using your ribbon. So I'm going to put mine a little lower. I'm going to think about the fact that it's going to be like this. I'm going to get it where I want it, and then I'm going to let the heat bond do all the rest of the work. Just going to iron it for about 6 seconds. And you can follow the directions on the heat bond. And we're going to tack it down with a zigzag, so this just allows it to stay there and doesn't move around while we're sewing. We've got our letters ironed on to our triangles. Now if you do not sew, then you can be done here, and all you have to do is hot glue the triangles to your ribbon. And what I would do with that is I would space them out center-wise, and I would put hot glue right here and place it down. Do the same thing across there. But I am going to zigzag around the edge of my letters before I put my ribbon on top of it. And I'm going to encase it. I'm going to create a binding out of this ribbon. So all we're going to do is we're going to iron this ribbon in half, and then we're going to encase it inside our ribbon. Okay, I've got my sewing machine on my zigzag stitching, and the burlap is a little tricky because it's not going to really catch a whole bunch on this side, so I'm really going to focus on doing the zigzag on the fabric side, and you'll see how that works. Okay, we're done. You can see how that looks more finished. Okay, we're going to create, this is our ribbon for our banner. We're going to create a binding, kind of like a blanket binding. We're just going to double it over. We're going to use a lot of steam. We're going to iron it all the way down. Okay, my ribbon is ironed in half, kind of like binding. I'm going to find out where the center of it is. I'm going to take the ends them together. Okay, so this is the center. And I'm going to put the center between the A and the L. That way I have the equal amount of ribbon on either side. I'm going to pin my triangles inside my binding, and I'm going to measure about 1 inch between each triangle. So I'll go ahead and start with the A. And sandwich it in there nicely all the way to the edge. I'm going to pin it. It goes all the way to the edge before we pin again. And pinning is tedious, but it really allows you to have a nice straight edge and you don't wonder whether your fabric has moved around. Okay, we're going to do that to the remaining 3 and then we'll start sewing. Okay, when you start, be sure to switch your machine back over to a straight stitch as I just zigzagged through this. Okay, so now we're ready. We're going to start about 1/2 inch from our first pendant. We're going to go pretty close to the edge. You want to be consistent with this, so get wherever you think you can be consistent. Now I am using orange thread, so it will be consistent in the sense of the color.
I think it's really good. It's adorable.
So now we've finished. I couldn't wait to show you. You can see how we've got our ribbon binding on the edge, and if you want you can even attach more bows on the edges. So all it needs to do is be hung up. So we'll get a picture of that in the fall when I get all my pumpkins up on my mantle.